I'm just telling the truth. I'm telling you what she did.
My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm 39 years old, and I found out the hard way that even family devotion has boundaries when my own mother took the stand at my ex-husband's custody hearing and branded me an unfit mother. Your Honor, my daughter has always been unstable, my mother declared, her voice carrying across the crowded courtroom. She can't keep a job. She's been in and out of therapy, and frankly, I don't believe she should have custody of my grandson. I sat at the defense table in a plain navy blazer, paired with a white blouse, my brown hair secured in the same neat style I'd worn for over 15 years. On my finger was a faint pale band, the mark left behind by the wedding ring I'd removed half a year earlier, glowing starkly beneath the courtroom's harsh lighting. From across the aisle, Marcus, my ex-husband, smirked, his pricey attorney nodding along as my mother's testimony landed blow after blow. The two of them had clearly conspired, knowing a mother's words against her own daughter would strike with devastating credibility. She's never been capable of giving Tyler stability, my mother continued, finding momentum as she built her case. She vanishes for days at a time, claims she's working, but I've never seen any sign of steady employment. My grandson deserves a true home with his father, someone with a career, someone who can properly support him. In the front row, my 8-year-old son, Tyler, sat beside my sister Karen. His wide, dark eyes were clouded with confusion as he watched his grandmother denounce me. Karen wouldn't meet my gaze. Her silence carried as much weight as my mother's accusations. My thoughts flickered to the 2 years since the divorce, sleepless nights wrestling with custody plans, while at the same time managing some of the most intricate cases in the state court system. The constant balancing act between my career and my role as Tyler's mother had been grueling, but I'd remained steadfast, all the while. She lives in a cramped apartment downtown, drives a beat-up car, and struggles to afford Tyler's school supplies, my mother pressed on. Meanwhile, Marcus owns a beautiful house in the suburbs, enjoys a steady income, and can give that boy the life every child should have. Behind the bench, Judge Patricia Morrison listened with practiced detachment. I'd worked alongside her for more than a decade, and I knew how deeply she understood the unique pressures of our field. But now she betrayed no flicker of recognition, her expression as composed and impartial as her position demanded. And furthermore, my mother added, her voice hitting its final crescendo, Rebecca has always been evasive about this so-called career of hers. She claims it's important, yet never says what it really is. For all we know, she could be tied to something illegal, something dangerous for my grandson. The gallery erupted in low murmurs. On the left side, Marcus's family nodded eagerly in collective agreement with my mother's character attacks. My side was sparse, just a handful of friends who'd adjusted their work schedules to stand by me. They were the only ones present who actually knew the truth about my profession. Then Marcus's lawyer, James Crawford, rose smoothly to address the court. Your Honor, this testimony clearly demonstrates that it would be in the boy's best interest for my client to receive full custody. The mother's lack of stability and her secrecy about her employment posed serious concerns regarding her capability as a parent. I stayed silent, hands calmly folded on the table, letting the performance play out. 15 years of serving as a judge myself had taught me the value of restraint, the importance of waiting until the right moment before unveiling the decisive move. Ms. Hayes, Judge Morrison finally addressed me. How do you respond to these claims surrounding your job and your ability to provide for your son? I rose deliberately, every motion controlled and sure. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness who can address those very concerns. Marcus's attorney frowned. Your Honor, we received no notice of any witnesses. The witness was unavailable until this morning, I answered evenly. But I believe his testimony will clear up any doubts about my employment. Judge Morrison gave a nod. Very well. Call your witness. I moved to the courtroom doors and opened them. In stepped a tall man clad in a flawless dark suit, silver hair perfectly groomed, his presence commanding immediate authority. Your Honor, I announced, my voice ringing across the now silent chamber, I call Chief Justice William Barrett to the stand. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom loud enough for everyone to hear. My mother's expression shifted rapidly, first self-assured, then startled, then utterly stricken, as the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court made his way to the witness stand. Chief Justice Barrett, I began, steadying my voice in the professional cadence I had cultivated over 15 years. Would you kindly identify me for the record? The Chief Justice fixed his gaze on me, his tone measured but warmly respectful. You are the Honorable Rebecca Hayes, Associate Justice of the State Supreme Court, where you have presided with distinction for the last 8 years. The sudden hush that followed was almost oppressive. I could hear my mother's sharp, involuntary breath. Across the room, Marcus's attorney fumbled through files in a panic. And Chief Justice Barrett, I pressed on, could you outline the scope of my duties? Justice Hayes oversees some of the most challenging civil and criminal cases before our court, he explained. She sits on the appellate panel handling death penalty reviews, chairs our Judicial Ethics Committee, and has authored multiple landmark rulings in family and child welfare law. I saw Tyler's eyes widen in astonishment. At last, he began connecting all the pieces. Why his mother so often worked late, why stacks of hefty legal documents regularly consumed my evenings, why I spoke about justice with such certainty. One more query, Chief Justice, I said. Could you speak to the issue of my finances? A faint smile touched his lips. Justice Hayes earns an annual salary of $195,000 in addition to benefits. She owns her penthouse apartment downtown and maintains a mountain retreat. Her financial disclosures are filed publicly, as is required of all judges currently serving. Turning toward the gallery, I caught sight of my mother, her jaw slack, her earlier testimony unraveling piece by piece. Your Honor, I addressed Judge Morrison, I'd like to explain why my family was unaware of my role. Judge Morrison tilted his head, curiosity plain on his face. 8 years back, when I accepted my appointment to the state Supreme Court, I deliberately chose to keep my personal and professional worlds apart. Not because I felt any embarrassment, far from it. I wanted my son to grow up with normalcy, free from the constant attention and weight of being the child of a judge. I met Tyler's gaze. His features mingled pride with confusion. That is why I lived modestly. I drove practical cars. I shopped where everyone else did, not in designer boutiques. My goal was to teach Tyler the value of hard work and humility, not allow him to assume privilege simply because of my position. Marcus gawked at me like he was seeing someone entirely new. For years, he had dismissed my boring courthouse job, never troubling himself to ask what my work truly entailed. The truth, I went on, is that the lengthy absences he resented were due to my handling of cases so complex they could last months. The reason I occasionally missed school events was because I was drafting court opinions that impacted thousands of families across the state. At that moment, Chief Justice Barrett interjected. If I may, Your Honor, Justice Hayes possesses one of the most exceptional legal minds I've encountered in 3 decades. Federal courts have upheld her decisions, and she is nationally recognized for her contributions to family law. I returned to the defense table, though I no longer felt like the accused. I stood for what I always had been, a sitting justice with 15 years of experience, a career grounded in fairness, and a reputation built on integrity. Your Honor, I began, addressing Judge Morrison, my entire career has been dedicated to safeguarding children and families. I've issued rulings that protected kids from abusive households, that established fair custody arrangements, and that placed child welfare above any other consideration. The courtroom was silent, heavy with the weight of my words. So for anyone to suggest that I'm incapable of caring for my own son, it isn't just false, it's an insult. An insult to every child I've defended, and to every family whose stability I've fought to protect from this very bench. I turned and caught sight of my mother, her face drained of color. What cuts the deepest, I continued, is that these accusations come from people who never took interest in my work, who never cared to ask what I actually did, who leapt to the worst assumptions instead of looking for the truth. Marcus' lawyer fumbled with his papers, clearly unsettled. Your Honor, we had no knowledge of. Of what? I cut in sharply. That your client was married to a sitting state Supreme Court justice for 6 years and never bothered to learn what her job was. Judge Morrison leaned in toward Marcus' attorney. Mr. Crawford, are you telling me your client didn't know his wife's profession during their marriage? Marcus finally managed to speak, tripping over his words. She told me she worked at the courthouse. I thought she was a clerk or something. The absurdity of it hung in the air, bitter and suffocating. For 6 years, I had shared a home with a man who assumed his wife was nothing more than a courthouse clerk, never questioning why I worked endless hours, why I came home with complex legal briefs, or why I sometimes traveled across the country for judicial conferences. Your Honor, I said steadily, turning to Judge Morrison, I would like to submit into evidence my judicial performance reviews, my financial disclosure records, and the custody evaluation report prepared by Dr. Sandra Williams, a court-appointed child psychologist. Judge Morrison glanced over the documents. Dr. Williams describes you as an outstanding parent, noting your strong bond with your child and finding no concerns about your ability to parent effectively. I looked around the room one more time. My mother, unable to meet my gaze. My sister, her expression tight with shame. My ex-husband, eyes fixed on the floor. And Tyler, meeting me with a new clarity and pride shining in his face. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady but gaining force, I have always believed that the child's best interests must come first in custody disputes. I've seen what happens when parents weaponize their children, when families betray each other for selfish reasons, when assumptions override facts. That is why I am asking for full physical custody of my son, with supervised visitation for his father until he completes co-parenting classes. Furthermore, I request that extended family members who have already provided false testimony not be involved in any future custody proceedings. Judge Morrison's expression was stern but decisive. In light of the evidence presented, and considering the troubling testimony from the defendant's mother, the court awards full custody to Justice Hayes. The father's visitation will remain supervised for 6 months, subject to review upon successful completion of court-ordered parenting classes. As the courtroom began to clear, Tyler hurried over and threw his arms around my waist. Mom, why didn't you tell me you're a judge? He whispered. I bent down so we were eye to eye. Because I wanted you to love me for being your mom, not because of what I do. He grinned wide. I think it's awesome. Does that mean you get to put people in jail? Sometimes, I said honestly. But most of the time, my job is to help families learn how to care for one another. My mother approached slowly, all her earlier boldness gone. Rebecca, I truly had no idea. I'm so sorry. I rose, keeping my arm protectively around Tyler's shoulders. Mom, you stood in court and swore I was an unfit parent without knowing anything about my life, my work, or my abilities. You were ready to tear apart my bond with my son based only on judgment and bias. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I was helping, Marcus said. Marcus said whatever he thought would get him custody, I cut in. And you chose to believe him over your own daughter. The courtroom was nearly empty now, save for a few family members and lingering onlookers. For 15 years, you've asked vaguely about my work, and I gave vague answers. I valued my privacy, but you never truly asked, never showed curiosity. You assumed that because I didn't flaunt my success, I must not have any. I glanced toward my sister Karen, who sat silently crying in the front row. I became a judge at 31, one of the youngest in state history. My rulings are studied in law schools. I've safeguarded countless children and families. I've committed my life to fairness and justice. Chief Justice Barrett, who had been waiting respectfully in the gallery, stepped forward. Rebecca, I hope this ordeal doesn't discourage you from continuing your outstanding work. Thank you, Chief Justice, I replied. If anything, it's reminded me why what we do matters so deeply. When we finally walked out of the courthouse, Tyler's small hand clasped in mine, I realized something important. I had spent years protecting him from the complications of my position, but in doing so, I had hidden my true self from the very people who should have known me best. And more than that, I saw clearly that respect built on false assumptions means nothing, while respect rooted in integrity can never be shaken. 6 months later, Marcus finished his parenting classes and was granted unsupervised visitation. He never remarried, and he never again questioned my ability to raise our son. My mother sent me a letter of apology that I chose not to answer. Some betrayals cut too deep, revealing too much about a person's character to simply forgive and erase. Now, Tyler proudly tells his friends his mom is a judge. He's learned about justice, fairness, and standing up for what's right. He's also learned that sometimes the people who love you most can wound you the deepest, but that pain doesn't define your worth. As for me, I came to understand that dimming your own light doesn't protect you. It only makes it easier for others to underestimate you. I stopped hiding my identity, began to celebrate my accomplishments, and showed my son that hard work and integrity are things to be proud of. The woman who stepped into that courtroom feeling attacked and alone was the same one who walked out, only this time vindicated and strong. The difference wasn't in my resume. It was in my choice to finally let others see who I truly was. Justice, I learned, isn't only something you deliver. Sometimes, it's something you claim for yourself.